Hi, welcome to Gabie's Knit Goodies. I am Gabie and I'm here today to talk all about the Traveler Hoodie by Andrea Mowry. But before I get started, you can find me on Gabie's Knit Goodies on Etsy, as well as GKT Yarn on Instagram and Gabie's Knit Goodies on Instagram. I have my hand-dyed yarn on Etsy, and then on Instagram I show off my projects at Gabie's Knit Goodies, and on GKT Yarn on Instagram I show off my yarn stuff and some dyeing stuff. So anyways, you can also always email me, and I'm on Ravelry, but not the best at keeping track of Ravelry. So today, like I said, all about Andrea Mowry's Traveler Hoodie, which I loved the concept of when it came out. Having like a luxurious hoodie, or having your hoodie be something that you've made, because I always love to wear my handmade garments, but sometimes they're not as casual. Like you want to just throw on a hoodie, and so the idea that you can just throw on a hoodie and it be your hand knit sweater is awesome to me. Now the original pattern is in a sport weight yarn, which sport weight yarn is a little bit thicker than fingering weight, but definitely thinner than like a DK or a worsted weight. So that kind of deterred me a little bit because I knew it would take a long time, or a decent amount of time, to knit. Here is a picture of it, or maybe I'll put up a picture from the internet that I get instead, because I don't know if this is going to show up quite right. Yeah, anyways, I'll probably put a picture from the internet up here instead of my phone, because you can probably see it better. So, yeah, it's adorable, isn't it? It's kind of like the texture, I would call it an exaggerated garter stitch. It's primarily knit in the round. It's drop shoulder, has a hood of course, and it has I-cord strings. Yeah, by exaggerated garter, I mean that you have multiple knit rounds and then multiple purl rounds in the sections that are knit in the round, well, in the whole thing. So part of it, because of the drop shoulder, I think you knit part of it flat and then seam them, but like the body part is knit in the round, and like the sleeves are knit in the round and stuff. Yeah, so construction is not difficult or anything, and the patterning is not difficult. I was a little nervous about the hood because I had never done that. I guess nervous wasn't the right word for it. Well, it was because of modifications I made, but I'll tell you about that in just a minute. So it was a decent knit, and I actually am thinking about doing another one. You do start with the hem, so you do start at the bottom, knitting the round, and knit up, and then you divide for the sleeves and do the front part and then the back part, and then I think it's a 3 needle bind off connecting the shoulders, and then you pick up and do the sleeves, and you pick up and do the hood. Yes. So my daughter really wanted this hoodie. I thought it would be perfect for her. She is cold a lot, and she loves my hand knit stuff. And I figured it would just be something she would wear a lot. So I decided to make it for her, but I also was very interested in boucle yarn. If you don't know what boucle yarn is, it is, here I have it in 2 different colors here. It is a yarn that, it's 100% merino. At least this, I'm sure you can get it acrylic or whatever, but mine's 100% merino. And it's got it's very loopy. It's very squishy, but it has all of these lovely loops on the yarn. And it's very squishy and very soft. Like I said, it's 100% merino, and this is superwash merino. And so it's so squishy. I thought it would make the perfect hoodie. So I decided on this yarn, and she told me like what color she wanted. So I call this Bee's Blue Boucle because Bee is for my daughter, and it was her colors that she wanted in here, which was blue and a little bit of brown and a little bit of like purpley pink. But like I said, the problem with this is 140 yards per 100 grams, which is like a DK or like worsted weight yarn. And with boucle yarn, it's very puffy, so you could even knit it probably at a little bit larger gauge than a regular DK weight yarn. But the pattern was meant for sport weight. But I couldn't find another hoodie pattern that I liked more. I really liked the vibe of this one. It was just very cute. So I decided to just modify the pattern for the different yarn and aim for the extra small or the smallest size of the pattern. Because again, this pattern is meant for adults, and she is a very petite 13-year-old now. So the smallest size has a circumference of 38 inches at the hem, circumference at the hem. And so what I did was did a bit of a swatch and figured out how many stitches I needed to make that circumference. And I figured I would just, based on the pattern dimensions and the schematic in the pattern, I would just knit to the inches rather than knitting to the stitch counts and row counts. So like I said, the very smallest size has a 38-inch circumference at the bottom, and so I did my calculations, and mine ended up being about 144 stitches for that smallest size. And I used, I think, a US 7 needle, whereas the pattern calls for a US 5 needle. So my gauge was just over 15 stitches per 4 inches or 10 centimeters, and the pattern gauge is 21.5 stitches for that same 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So like I said, my gauge was a much larger gauge, like 5-6 stitches larger per 4 inches than the pattern. So I cast on less stitches than what the pattern called. But I did indeed meet my 38 inches. That's exactly what the smallest size has. So that worked out just fine. But I had to continue to use like the measurements in the pattern to figure out like how many rows to do and things like that, because my row gauge, I'm not sure what my row gauge is, but it's definitely a longer than hers per stitch. So here, under the arm here, like I said, it is a drop shoulder, a knit from the bottom up, and so under the arm she actually increases to get that drop shoulder shape that she wants. And I just kind of had to wing it, because it tells you like how many to cast on there, and I'm not sure how many I did, but I did it till it seemed like it would be about the right number of inches under there. And I think I kind of reverse calculated how many that would be. So since she has 21.5 stitches per 4 inches, and if she called for, say, 10 or 11 stitches added on, cast on, then I was able to calculate that based on my per inch stitch count. And so I cast on less here under the arms. And then it was pretty easy to count for my armhole depth. I ended up with a 16-inch circumference at that widest part here of the arm. And this section here is about 8 inches. And again, I tried to base everything on the inches and calculating based on my gauge versus her stitch counts in her pattern. And it really wasn't that difficult to do. It might sound more complicated than it was, but it really wasn't very difficult. The difficult part came into play when everything was done. I just had a big open neck that I was a little worried was too big. And it was cute and I really wanted to finish it, but I wasn't sure how to deal with the hood. Because the hood is, you know, it's not as straightforward and it doesn't have measurements in the pattern, like, you know, how wide this section is or anything like that. So I just had to wing it on it. Initially, I thought my neckline was a little bit too big, so I did a few rows after I picked up around the neck. I did a few rows of knitting in, reducing my stitch count a little bit so that it wouldn't be quite so open in the neck because I wanted to keep her warm. And then I kind of followed the hood pattern with reducing the stitch counts. My one mistake I feel like I made in this garment was the hood, because it just feels like it looks perfect. It looks cute when she's not wearing the hood up on her head. But to put the hood on her head, it's just not quite like deep enough. It's almost long enough. It probably could be a little bit longer, but it like stops right here on her face. Like it needs to be able to come forward a little bit more. It like barely covers her ears. So if I were to do this again, I would increase the hood size. And I actually read some information of other people who knit this, and they were saying that the original pattern, following it as it is written, actually has a fairly small hood as well. So maybe it's not entirely my fault that I made it small. I don't know. But it's really cute and she loves it. One other thing with the hood, you knit like extra and fold it over here. I think you actually pick up and knit this little folded tube with a little hole at the bottom, and then you do an I-cord and you run it through. I had never done much with I-cords and I thought it would be terrible. Actually, I was not looking forward to it, but it was a very mindless thing that just grew kind of fast, and so I really didn't mind it at all. And I decided to use the I-cord of my rosé colorway. It's similar to this Dahlia's, it just didn't have speckles in it, although this would go well with it too. Because it was different enough, and I liked, like in her pattern, she has, I think, bright orange with a reddish maroony body of her sweater. And I liked the fact that these were a contrast. And I just tied a little knot in the bottom of each one. I don't really think it would come out very easy anyways, but it just looks even more like casual hoodie-like, like that. So I love it. Absolutely love it. She absolutely loves it. And the boucle yarn just makes it so squishy. So squishy. So I would highly recommend, if you're interested in making a super cozy sweater or hoodie, a garment, that you try some boucle yarn with it, because it just is like, it's so squishy. And I think it does make it even more casual in a way because of that texture. It's like, you know, almost like buying a fuzzy hoodie or something like that. So it's gorgeous on her. It's like a, you know, it definitely looks like an elevated hoodie, but it still totally has the hoodie vibe at the same time. So I really want to make one for myself. Before I get into that, let me make sure I didn't leave off anything that I wanted to talk about. Like I said, the pattern calls for a sport weight yarn, 21.5 stitches per 4 inches. And she uses size 5, US 5 needles on the body, size 3 on the hem. I used size 7 on the body and 5 for the hem. Yeah. Now, you can definitely see the ribbing, or that horizontal garter pattern in this. If it had any more detail in the texture pattern, the boucle yarn would totally like eliminate that because of the texture of the yarn. Unless it's very bold texture in the pattern, you're not going to see it. So do keep that in mind if you ever use this yarn, this type of yarn. I'm trying to show it. Yes. If I haven't already, or maybe again, I will show a little bit of images or video of my daughter wearing this garment. Like I said, she loves it and she wears it all the time. And I can show you, there is some wear. I made this quite a while ago. I've just been a little slow getting around to recording it. You can tell that it has a little bit of wear on the sleeve here especially. But because it's this loopy yarn, it kind of blends in. So the wear on the yarn is not, it's not evident unless you were the one who created it. Yeah. So it doesn't exactly have a lot of pillage, but it's gotten like almost fuzzier on the raised parts of that texture pattern, which does kind of blur the color a little bit too, I think. It's primarily on the sleeves here. Alright, so I want to make one. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do. I might dye some sport weight yarn, which I recently got in some bare sport weight merino yarn, and follow the pattern like to a T and do that. And I want to actually make it out of Mexican hot chocolate, which is kind of similar to her color, only it's more variegated. And it's browns and reds in there, and it's just like this rich, warm, cozy color. So that's what I would like to do. Although I'm also toying with the idea of dyeing boucle yarn in that same colorway, because I just adore the squishiness. It's just so squishy, and I love that. Yeah, I don't know yet. And if I did that, I think I would follow the pattern correctly for like the smallest size, maybe, using the larger yarn and the larger needles, and just follow the smallest size. I probably should do a few calculations first to see like how big that will end up being. I want it to be wide, but I want it to be kind of cropped. Very similar to how the original pattern is. I really like that look. Yeah. And then I think I might do my little strings in coffee with cream. So, because the yarn is that browns and reds, then this would add a contrast may not be the right color. It's so much lighter than the rest of it that it would stand out enough to give that vibe that I want, but it's still the same, in the same color family. So that's what I'm thinking. The problem is I have some other plans of things I want to cast on too. So I don't know how soon I'm going to get to this. I'm hoping actually to get to it fairly soon because I really want it. I just think it'd be a garment that I would wear all the time. Like my daughter wears this one all the time. But I have a cardigan I want to do as well. And then I have sweater number 20 that is almost off the needles. All I have left to do is the neckline. Finally finished that second sleeve. So excited. I'll tell you guys about that next week though. Yeah. So let me know if you have knit this garment or if you want to knit this garment and your plans. Or if you would knit it if it was a thicker weight. Like I feel like the pattern would get even more traction, even more knitters to do it if it was a thicker weight. Because it's a hoodie, like it's not like a precious, delicate garment. You want to knit it fast, and having it thick is not a negative thing because it's a cozy hoodie. So I feel like she should have done it in like a DK or worsted weight in the pattern originally. But yeah, maybe she'll come out with another one. I know there are other hoodies out there. I just really like this one. I like the look of it. I like the shape of it. Anyways, happy knitting, and I'll talk to you later.